Welcome to episode 361 of FBI Case File Review with Jerry Williams. I'm a retired agent on a mission to show you who the FBI is and what the FBI does through my books, my blog, and my podcast case reviews with former colleagues. Today, we get to speak to retired agent Stacey Bradley Perkins, who served in the FBI for 30 years. In this episode, she reviews one of the first international innocent images online predator cases. She investigated Dmitry Bron, who, using the code name Nanny 69, operated from Virginia Beach, an international internet site called the Orchild Club that offered 15,000 images of graphic child pornography. The case resulted in the arrest of 28 people for crimes against children. The Innocent Images National Initiative targets those involved in the production and distribution of child pornography, also referred to as child sexual images. Stacey worked and managed the Internet Images National Initiative for over 2/3 of her FBI career. She briefed President George W. Bush about the case that we're going to review and the need for increased funding to target online predators. Stacey began her bureau career as a member of the Newark Division's Special Surveillance Group, SSG, where she conducted surveillance on subjects of foreign counterintelligence and counterterrorism investigations. Upon receiving an appointment as a special agent, her next field assignment was to the Norfolk Division, where she worked violent crime and began working crimes against children cases. When she received a transfer to the Oklahoma City field office, she also investigated cases involving the exploitation of women and human trafficking. Based on her experience, Stacey received a specialty transfer to the Baltimore Division, where she was tasked with creating the Innocent Images National Initiative Task Force. The program expanded to 28 additional FBI-sponsored task forces throughout the U.S. To encourage participation at an international level, Stacey planned and organized a 6-month tour of 15 different countries to meet with law enforcement representatives. Her campaign resulted in thousands of new cases around the world. Stacey oversaw the relocation of the Innocent Images National Initiative from the Baltimore Division to FBI headquarters as a new 25-employee unit under the Cyber Division. In recognition of her efforts, Stacey received commendations from FBI Director Robert Mueller for the creation of the Innocent Images Initiative International Task Force and from the British Parliament for her Crimes Against Children presentation to lords and ladies in Great Britain. Stacey stepped down from management and received an Office of Preference transfer to Jacksonville, Florida, where she continued to work crimes against children cases until her retirement. Currently, she is the founder of Stacey Perkins, LLC, where she helps high-tech companies sell their services to law enforcement. I want to remind you that last week I told you I would be refreshing the name of my podcast. Since then, I received a name change tongue-in-cheek idea from listener Maureen. She suggested I rename the show FBI Fired Case File Review and start interviewing all the FBI employees who have been demoted, forced to retire, or to resign under pressure. Her suggestion was offered out of concern and to provoke thought. Maybe I should try to talk to some of these people. What do you think? But back to when I said I was refreshing the name of the podcast, I was actually hinting at my decision to drop the word retired. My show now is simply called FBI Case File Review. In my effort to reach a younger crowd eligible to consider joining the FBI, the word retired had to go. I made the change because I'm hoping to capture younger listeners. My Spotify listeners only make up 15% of my total listenership across all podcast apps, and on Spotify, 23 to 27-year-olds make up only 14% of that audience. Don't worry, the format of this podcast is not changing. I'm still exclusively interviewing retired FBI agents and employees about FBI cases and programs. I gotta give thanks to my favorite podcaster, Javier Leyva, host of the Pretend podcast, for updating his original design of my podcast artwork. In your podcast app's description of this episode, there's a link to the show notes at jerrywilliams.com. You'll also find links to where you can buy me a cup of coffee, join my reader team about crime fiction and the FBI and books, TV, and movies, and learn more about me and my books. Thank you for your support. Now here's the show. I want to welcome my guest, retired agent, Stacey Perkins. Hi, Stacey.
Hey, Jerry. How are you?
I'm great. I've done a number of case reviews about child exploitation or child abduction cases. But the one thing I like about my show, well, I like a lot of things about my show, but one of them is the fact that we share institutional knowledge, information about the historical beginnings of some types of violations that the FBI works. And today, you are going to be able to take us back to the very beginning of the FBI's initiative into innocent images, the National Initiative and Task Force. So tell us just a little bit about that. Give us an overview before we get into one of your very first investigations.
Innocent Images was started by the FBI in 1993. It was not a violation that the Bureau was really exposed to and or worked very much. We, of course, always work child abductions, but Innocent Images specifically is referring to the production of child pornography and the use of the computers for that child pornography. Before computers came around, it was usually the magazines and pictures kind of passed around on the dark, down low sort of thing. But when computers came out, it exploded the Innocent Images program because now people were now seeking each other out. Oh, you like child porn. I like child porn. Let's talk. The FBI, because again, as you know, there's crossing state lines with the computers and international lines at this point, the FBI was really the only point to really work some of this because it was really exploding.
And I know I saw a C-SPAN interview that you did, which I will post in the show notes. But you were explaining that before the computers, it was mainly the United States Postal Inspection Service that was looking into this because they were hard copies of photographs?
Correct. The Bureau really wasn't interested in it because it was mostly just using mail systems. In Europe, they used to make little magazines, child exploitation, child porn magazines, and you could get them via the mail. But that was the only way, really, or you would take pictures on your own and maybe send them through the mail to people. That's the only way you were able to distribute or view child porn until the computers came around. That was a much bigger animal to try to fight from the U.S. Postal Service. They can't take that on. They don't have the investigators. They don't have the computer knowledge. So that's why the Bureau started working it.
What's the right language? Because I've heard from others that they really don't want us to use the term child pornography.
Yeah, we say child exploitation images. You know, the Bureau, we always change our verbiage on everything every few years, but it's child pornography or the sexual exploitation of children in images. That's what we refer to it as.
All right. Another article that you sent me really brought this down to terms that we can understand, where you're talking about a point where child predators were sharing these images as if they were exchanging baseball cards.
Yes. As soon as they were able to find each other on the internet and they started distributing to each other on private groups on the dark web, they were using special groups that you could only get to them if you were invited. So, for instance, Dmitry Bron ran a webpage, and the only way you knew of it is if you were invited. And then even if you were invited, you had to share images to get, quote, validated by him. He ran it. And he would refer to that group. If you belong to that group, bottom line, there were over 40 or 50 of them that we took off. They were called the Orchid Club, Orchild.
That Dmitry Bron case was one of your first cases, wasn't it?
It was, yes. He was the organizer and he lived in Virginia Beach. I was in the Norfolk division.
All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we review that case so people can get a clear understanding of what we're talking about? Then, after we review the case, I would love for you to provide us some detailed information about this Innocent Images National Initiative and all of the work that you did in Baltimore and headquarters based on that.
Okay.
I want to go through the stages of this investigation. So I want to review when you first learned about it, what you did to identify him, what kind of steps that you took to secure all the information that you needed, your arrest of him, what he told you. I want you to break the whole thing down. So where do you want to start?
Okay. All right. We started the case from an individual out in California. He had a child, a young girl who was in school and was experiencing some anxiety, and some conversation ensued with school counselors. She made some allegations and was in pain. CPS got called in. She revealed that she had been the victim of several people engaging in sexual activity with her.
And how old was she?
She was 12. Her parents were aware of it. CPS and the locals got involved in it and it blew up. Because we immediately got a search warrant for the parents' house, got in there. These were they're so new. Even computers back then were so new. Not a lot of people had some of that experience. So the locals called in the FBI because he had probably the top of the line computers back then. So they didn't know what to do with it. So the FBI comes in, and through the investigation out there, it was determined that she had been violated by a number of people. The parents got picked up. It spiraled at that point. What had occurred was, so we have a little background, this individual allowed other men who belonged to this club called the Orchid Club to come out there and engage in sexual activity with his daughter. Everything was videotaped, and they would send all of those handmade videotapes to my subject. His name, Dmitry Bron. He lived in Virginia Beach. We luckily have some pretty intelligent computer people, even when they first came out, some real computer experts back in the day.
What time period is this?
This was 1995. It was still a very young program at the time. Innocent Images was maybe a year and a half old at that point. They got into the computer, and what they did is they were able to get into the computer and realize that this individual, the father, had belonged to a club. It's called a File Transfer Protocol, FTP site. It is a site where you can chat. It's on the dark web sort of scenario on the internet. It's all about trading pictures. It could be pictures of anything. But this particular FTP site that he belonged to, he started cooperating. So he gave us his password and everything, and we were able to get in there and see that there were in excess of 40 people in there talking and trading child pornography and talking about the victims that they were perpetrating.
And so this father was sharing and trading images and videos of his own daughter being abused?
That's correct. His own daughter. They would have these parties every once in a while. Somebody would host. They had to have a victim that would be available to other people, or they would just record their own sessions. They would send all of their, again, because it was hard copies or video cameras or pictures, they would send those to Nanny 69. And he would upload those to the FTP site for the rest of the Orchid Club to see and share. Back then, when you're looking at FTP sites, all you have a lot of the time was a screen name and then your IP address after. So when we got in there and started trying to, okay, who's Wonder 7? Who's Nanny 69? These are screen names. And then you would have the IP address. We're trying to find out who they are. So you get subpoenas. You're subpoenaing everybody, Facebook, or they're using Comcast, or you're sending it to Verizon, or you're sending it to AT&T. You send the subpoenas out with the IP address trying to identify where is their internet hookup? Where was Nanny 69? Because clearly, when we got in there, Nanny 69 was the leader of that FTP site, which was called the Orchid Club. Orchild, not the flower. It was a little spin. He thought he was very clever. So we started just doing subpoenas, finding out who are all these screen names. We started spinning off cases. We started doing controlled deliveries.
All right, so now we have the LA division where they initially discover this FTP site and the Orchid Club.
Yeah.
I take it they send out leads then as they identify where these IP addresses come back, then they send leads to those different offices?
They do. And because like back then, if we had an urgency, so obviously there was some urgency in some of these because some of the images looked like they were very recent from other bad guys. So they came across teletypes, which you knew we had about 24 hours to get to it right away. I was the baby agent working on the violent crime squad, and I got all those. Little Norfolk division, we had 52 agents. Yeah, I was the newest and I was one of the only females. So yeah, I got all of those. Listen, I couldn't be happier about that. I loved it. But the teletype came in. We started talking to some of the other divisions. Oklahoma City just took a guy off. He was in the Orchid Club. We got into his computer, and that's when we really narrowed it down. We knew who Nanny 69 was because he was a computer whiz. He kept spoofing his IP address. But when the Oklahoma City guy got taken off, we were able to nail him down on his last IP. And that's when we were able to get his address. And I started doing a little surveillance. And then I immediately identified him and we went after him. But he was really hard. And some of those other guys were really hard. If they were computer savvy, they were moving their IP address everywhere. So it was hard to figure out who was who. It would spoof to other international. I remember a couple of times he was spoofing to Russia. He was originally from Russia. He was a Russian immigrant, very intelligent. Gosh, we got somebody in Russia. That's not going to work. But no, we found him in Virginia Beach.
All right, so once you are able to identify him, is that enough for you to charge him, or do you want to catch him in the act?
No. So what we did is we wrote a warrant. I wrote a search warrant and arrest warrant on just a distribution. And we went after him for the distribution because we knew once we got into that FTP site, we knew he had also uploaded pictures of his own. We knew there was a victim out there. We didn't know who it was, but we knew he had a victim. So we got him, and because he ran that site, he was distributing everybody else's too. Like he had 15,000 images and videos of all these other children we didn't know. And he would send them. If you belonged to the Orchid Club, you got to go to the FTP site and download any of those other files. So he was the main distributor of the Orchid Club. He was the only one that was allowed to do it.
In exchange for these images, he traded these images, but was he also charging? Did he actually earn money from these images?
No, it wasn't about money. It's not about money to them. I worked in innocent images for the better part of 20 years. I think I found one person that would do it for money, but it wasn't just child porn. It was all kinds of fetishes because people will pay for pictures of fetishes as well, like whether it's your feet or pick your poison. There's quite a few, right? But no, it had nothing to do with money. He was all about status. How much can I, because I'm Nanny 69. I have the largest collection. People admire me and I love it and I can't stop looking at it. He was addicted to it. They all were. In some capacity, they could not stop themselves.
An obsession.
An obsession.
Well, let me ask you a question then, because we know of the FBI's ability to infiltrate and go undercover. As part of this case, did that occur? Did somebody try to, and I could see where the illegalities of this could come in. If you join, you have to provide images. But did we try to do that? Did we try to infiltrate the group?
No, we didn't have to. That came later. We started doing that later. When we moved the entire Innocent Images program, I actually got a specialty transfer when I was in Oklahoma City back to Baltimore because we started the Innocent Images program out of Baltimore. We definitely started doing that. We definitely were doing that then. What we did is once we got into the Orchid Club FTP site, we were just using their sign-on. So we were using the California guy's sign-on. We were using the Oklahoma City's guy's sign-on. They gave us their sign-on name and their password. So we were just pretending, sort of, just sitting there. We didn't say anything, but we already were allowed in the group.
That makes sense. You already had access. You were already initiated into the group.
That's correct. We already had given them photos. We were welcomed into that group and had been in there for months already. So we just took over the account. and just sat there. And once people started talking, or uploading, we started identifying them. And as we identified them, we started taking them off. Quite a few of the ones in the United States, that's exactly how we did. We did controlled deliveries. People thought they were going to get videos, or we just identified them from their IP address and just sent out master search warrants. So like Oklahoma City, he had a master search warrant and he sent out several leads from Oklahoma City because that individual also was one of Dmitry's right-hand man. He had administrative rights to a certain degree for the Orchid Club. So he helped a little bit if Dmitry wasn't available on vacation or what have you. The Oklahoma City guy was his backup. So he had some rights. So as soon as we got his account, we went to bat at that point and started taking off a lot more people. And Dmitry, once we took him off, we now owned the entire club. And that's when we started sending the international leads out too.
So how long after you got the teletype identifying or helping you, giving you the information you needed to identify Dmitry, and you actually executing the warrant to take him down and to take over the club?
We took him down in about 3 days. It might have been 4. I don't know why 3 sounds like it's sticking in my head. It was about 3 days because we had a pretty good idea who it was. Our AUSA wanted one more ping on an IP to just verify it was that house. And that's when we got it, the Oklahoma City guy. And that's when, okay, we're good. So I already pretty much had the warrant written. I knew who it was. I had already done the surveillance. I wrote it. We just needed to get it in front of the judge and let's go.
All right, so now you have the warrant. Tell us about the day that you executed that warrant. What happened? Who was with you? Give us the details.
Okay. Again, I was a baby agent. Remember when we were baby agents, we were ready to jump into dumpsters and dumpster dive and do any surveillance or anything, just give it to me. I'll do it. So because Dmitry ran the club, everybody had to send him the child porn, the CP. He was the only person who was allowed to take hard copies. For instance, if somebody used a video camera, if they did a video camera, he was the one, because he was smart, he would be able to transfer all that video into the computer, and he would always stamp everything with this little Nanny 69 on the bottom corner. He would do it on a daily basis. He was monitoring his FTP site probably at a 24 hours. He would monitor it 21 hours. We already were up on seeing his activity, how often he was on, because we were able to see that. As soon as we got the warrant, Oklahoma City pretended that they just recorded another session and were overnighting through UPS VHS tape. Dmitry was very excited. I was going to be the one that delivered that. I put together the ops plan. I was going to be a UPS delivery guy, the little brown onesie. I put that on, and I was going to hand deliver it to him to verify it was him in the house. I was able to do that. I hand delivered that, handed it to him in the front door. I turned around and left. I came back around the corner. I took off my onesie. It was a matter of 3-4 minutes. We hit the house. He was in front of his computer. His pants were down at his ankles. He was jamming that VHS tape. Clearly wasn't real child porn. We corrupted the file. And he was getting furious because he couldn't get it to play. But he already was prepared to, I hate to say it, he was going to relieve himself. He was trying to get ready to be excited because he thought he was going to get some new child porn to see. And we literally picked him up, his pants down to his ankles, and made him throw his handful of tissues away and locked him up, and then executed the search warrant on the house.
Stacey, I may never be able to erase that image from my imagination.
Yeah. Working innocent images, there's a lot of images that, quite honestly, I wish I could scrub out of my head. Sometimes you just can't, but I'll never forget that one. We locked him up, brought him downtown, and then the whole course after that was identifying, trying to go get the victim of the case and get her safe.
Did he have any admissions? Did he cooperate? Did he talk to you?
He didn't at first, I got to be honest. I was a young agent, just so angry of what he had been doing. I was angry. And I remember telling him, I gave it to him, Jerry, I got to be honest. I'm like, you're a horrible person. I got much better at interviewing after that, I have to tell you.
Why don't we stop and talk about that interviewing method? Because I had an agent who worked the same type of cases. And what he learned and what he described to me was that he started to look at those type of interviews that you're angry and that you think the person is disgusting. But he switched it in his mind that he was having a conversation with a purpose. Jim Kyle, I don't know if you know Jim Kyle.
Yes.
Tell me about that mindset change that you had to make.
You have to. And honestly, no matter what violation you investigate, you have got to learn how to control how you feel about that. I became friendly enough with some of the Baltimore City bank robbers. They would tell me anything I wanted. When you're a younger age, and you have to learn how to be good at interviewing, and you have to learn how to control your emotions. I remember one of my first training agents, old Hoover boy, Marty Houlihan. God, he was a good agent. Before we would go into a room for an interview, he's like, remember, take a deep breath and just let it out, because we know what they did. Crimes against children are especially hard, I got to be honest, because it's the innocence of children. They don't have a say. It's just like people who can hurt animals or hurt older people can hurt children. There's a special place that, like, it's hard to relate to people like that. Like, I was horrified what he did, but you have to shut that down because they won't talk to you. If they detect that you're disgusted by them or horrified by them, 9 times out of 10, you and I both know they're not going to talk to you. So you have to learn how to just separate it. And a lot of times you almost befriend them and pretend that you understand the addiction. It's not his fault. Oh, it's not your fault. I understand. It's a sickness. It's just something that you were born with. I understand. Tell me how it happened. Tell me what happened. That interview lasted for hours. He had the largest collection. He had over 15,000 images of child porn and videos. Everybody knew it was him because he was very clever. He thought it was important for him. He thought it was very statusy. He thought it was like trading baseball cards. And he ran it, and he would get all the child porn, and he would stamp everything on the bottom of every picture or video. It was his little screen name, Nanny 69. He was world renowned for it. Like, you could literally see old chats. If you look them up, you'll see some of the old chatter from some of them. People are admiring him. Oh, you're Nanny 69. You're a legend. You got the most of everybody. He was quite proud of the fact that he had the largest collection of child porn. At that time, we had believed that he had victimized his own somebody, but it wasn't until we actually started talking to him that we realized it was his best friend's daughter.
Wow. Best friend's daughter. Did the best friend know that?
Him and his wife say no. They had 2 daughters. He tried to victimize the youngest one as well. He was really infatuated with the elder one, who was only 12 at the time. He really concentrated on her, but they say they did not know. They caught him at one point, the mother and father, in the basement with his 12-year-old daughter when they came back from a date night. He was babysitting, and they were both naked.
That's like a clue.
Right. A 40-year-old man who, first of all, volunteers to watch your 12-year-old and 8-year-old daughter, but also is in the basement naked with your 12-year-old daughter. But they said they did not know, and that's all we can go with. She was safe at that point once we got Dmitry in custody. You get done with interviews like that, and first thing you want to do is go take a shower. I'm a bit of a fitness fanatic, and I always had to go work out, go for a long run just to clear your head. It can shake you to the core. People who do terrible things to children, he did not look at it that way. He looked at it as that was his to do with what he wanted. He felt like he loved her in some way, and it wasn't bad what he was doing.
Wow. When you first arrest him, you do not know who this child is. I think you said you thought it might have been a relative of his.
We did. We thought it was a relative because he had so much access to her. Like, it's somebody he had a lot of access to, because it wasn't like a onesie twosie thing. He had hundreds of pictures and videos of her. So when you have the volume he had of this child, it's a relative, it's somebody very close. So we knew he had no children. He was never married. He lived with his parents. So we knew, who else could it be? One of his best friends, who also worked in one of the computer stores, we knew he had 2 daughters, and it didn't take but 2 seconds to figure out. Once we saw him and those girls, we knew immediately.
Wow. And going through my mind, I'm thinking the fact that he worked for Dmitry may have been one of the reasons why they did not connect the dots or want to jump to that conclusion that something was happening when he found Dmitry and his daughter naked in the basement. He would have lost his livelihood.
Yes, he would have. Yes, his entire livelihood depended on Dmitry for years. And they were very close. They were together every day.
So even if he, quote unquote, didn't know, he didn't want to know.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Once you've gotten him to talk and you identified this young girl, tell us the next steps, because I would imagine even back then, there had to be something in place to make sure that you do this interview with this child correctly so that it will hold up in court.
Yeah, so we always did those interviews. We immediately got CPS involved. I actually applaud the local CPS during that situation because they were really good at helping me interview her. She was very forthright. It was really emotional. She was more concerned about her little sister. She is a special person. Really, I admire her. But she was very forthright. She told us what happened and how long it was going on for years. It was a very long interview. CPS has special rooms inside their different offices, and we went in there, and they have special rooms, depending on the age of the child, how they can communicate what's going on to them. I've interviewed children as young as 4, where you would interview them a totally different way than you would a 12-year-old like her. But she was very forthright, and you could see as soon as we introduced ourselves, and I'm looking at her and I introduced myself, she's like, thank you, because it's going to stop.
So she was ready to talk. What was it that he was saying to her that stopped her from sharing this information with an adult?
He threatened the whole livelihood. He was going to fire her father, take all their belongings from the house, put them on the street. She was absolutely frightened to death of his power. And he wasn't a big fella. He was actually a very small, statured guy. Her father was an actual big guy. And we talked about that a little bit, how she felt like her father was such a strong, big guy, but couldn't protect her. Because even though Dmitry was a smaller guy, he was in charge and could ruin them. And he would tell her, I'll take everything you own. Yeah, I love you. You know I love you. It's all manipulation. He's a grown person. He's a grown man, and that's a child. So it was a lot of manipulation and a lot of grooming. I think we averaged her out about 8.5, 9 years old. You go through years of grooming of this, so you believe you're a perpetrator. Distribution of child pornography back then really didn't carry much weight, and we'll go into it later. I had to really push. When I started working at headquarters, I briefed President George W. Bush on trying to get the penalties higher because some of these guys weren't getting much. I still to this day, Dmitry, I think, got 27.5 years, and I don't think it was enough.
Did he plead guilty? Did they go to trial? What happened?
Dmitry pled guilty. He didn't want to. He had actually a really good attorney. Even to the end, like even in the hearing, his plea hearing must have taken the entire day. Honestly, I think it did, Jerry. It was pretty much the entire day, a 6-hour hearing. He was horrified. Like when my AUSA would bring up some of the stuff he did or some of the things he said, he would make a scene to his attorney. He literally at one point tried to fire his attorney during his plea hearing because he felt like he was being put in a bad light.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like he really didn't think he did anything wrong.
Wow.
Like he really is like, I love her. She belongs to me sort of thing. What's the big deal? I'll never forget he tried to fire his attorney. That didn't go over well.
What convinced him to plead guilty?
Oh, we had him. Clearly, we got into his computer system. He had servers in his attic. He had porn in every one of his servers in the computer stores. He had a server in his house full of child porn. We got into all of it. Plus, he was producing. And the original warrants were for distribution, but we charged him and superseded all on the production of child porn because that was the only one that gave you more time if you produced it yourself. We made him plead guilty to the production of child porn and dropped the distribution with him cooperating. I forfeited at his house and kicked his parents out. That was fantastic. Huge house in Virginia Beach. 2 or 3 computer stores. He was a computer genius, so he was really a smart cookie. And I took his computer stores as well, his cars and everything, because he produced so much child porn in all of those locations. The statutes then weren't the greatest, but even then we had the ability to forfeit anything as long as it was used in the production of the child porn. So he did it in his car. Every one of those computer stores he would take her to and do something with. His house, we took it all. And he then went on and also cooperated and helped us take down some more people. But he had to cooperate and start giving us everything and everybody he knew other than in the Orchid Club. And he did. He didn't want to. He fought that tooth and nail. He just didn't think he did anything wrong. He did his huffing and puffing, very dramatic in the courtroom, but yeah, judge threw the book at him and gave him pretty much the max and upward departure on him as well. An extra 2.5 years outside the guidelines because he was just horrified. 27.5 years.
Great to hear.
Yeah. We sent him off to Butner. He was one of the guys that we had a study going on using polygraphs and behavioral analysis. So BAU, I think you know that, was running all kinds of studies on these guys who victimized children. He actually participated in some of it. Victims of child crimes, it is a never-ending battle for them to get over that, especially the real young ones. It's a battle to be okay in your own skin after that. It never leaves them. I got Christmas cards from that particular victim, oh my gosh, for years after, just thanking me that I saved her.
And I guess that's because not only have they been abused physically and mentally, but the images of that are out there on the internet forever.
Forever. You can't ever get them back. Judge Jackson, he brought that up. Like, he was just so angry about it. Even when he was given his sentence, he was like, this child will be reminded of this forever. Her children will be reminded of this forever. Her grandchildren will be reminded because they're always going to be out there. You can't pull them back. You cannot get them back. They're out there.
So now you have this information, you have access to the Orchid Club, and now have the ability to identify the international participants. So tell us a little bit more about that.
That's the first time that we really realized how absolutely huge the amount of people that were interested in child pornography at that time and the lengths that they would go to. There were at least 7 or 8 international guys that were in the Orchid Club that were participating in sending Dmitry their own porn. I specifically remember helping write warrants for the UK, Germany, Austria, Australia, and Norway. There were other ones after that, but some of those other leads got kicked out from other divisions. There were so many that we were like trying to, I'll take these 5. You take those 5. LA take these 5. You're trying to divide and conquer. So I took off those 5. They all got identified. They all went to jail. I think at least 4 more victims were identified and saved from continued abuse on the international front.
We talked about how this was in the mid-1990s and that the FBI and federally, we were just getting into these types of charges and violations and prosecutions. What did you find out about what was happening internationally as far as them investigating and trying to stop this type of trading of child pornography, child sexual images?
They looked at child pornography a lot differently in the international community than we did in America. I wouldn't say it was accepted, but they did not have even close the penalties that we had.
And you thought ours were inadequate.
Absolutely were inadequate. They definitely weren't adequate. They got a few years here and there, some of them. I was actually shocked. It was mid-90s, and I remember at some point, man, if I could ever make a bigger impact on the international arena, if I could get a chance, I'm going to try to do something, make a bigger impact on that. Because why should a child who's living in Germany be any less important to saving and putting their perpetrator in jail forever than an American child? A child is a child is a child, and nobody should have to go through that. How do we educate our international partners? How do we show them the impact this has on these victims and what it does? So I made a promise them that I was going to do everything I could to try to push us in educating our partners. I've been all over Europe. I have taught in the English Parliament and put a wig on my head to try to educate everybody I can on what impact child pornography has on our victims. The only way to try to stop it is to make the penalty stiffer. Maybe you can make somebody change their mind and not do something. That's the only way, in my opinion. I made a point then to make sure I could make a bigger splash on that arena if I could.
Well, I want to thank you for reviewing this case for us because it gives us a clear understanding of the mindset of these perpetrators and how they trade these images. So, from this case, it sounds like you decided that this was something that you wanted to do at a more managerial level. So, tell us more about where you went from working these type of cases in Norfolk and how you started to manage these type of cases as a full headquarters program. I know there was a transition of innocent images. Tell us about that.
There's only a handful of agents across the country that worked Innocent Images cases. This is 1998. We were starting the Innocent Images program out of Baltimore division. They asked for specialty transfers, any agents, and there was a handful of us that all came in, and I came in and worked Innocent Images. Now, when I say I was just a case agent, we had a special room. It was our undercover room. We all had undercover IDs. And what I did for a few years before I went the manager route, I literally pretended to be a little boy and a little girl online. And I worked what was called travelers. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. I got to be honest. It's disheartening when you think about it. We called them travelers because these were bad guys across the country, across the world. We had them come in from international, come in and meet us at locations. Sometimes it was a mall. We were in the Calverton, Maryland office at the time. There were so many coming in. We were writing our ops plans to just walk across the street and lock them up at the McDonald's right there. Because we were like, there was too many at a time coming in. So it was just easiest for us to ops plan the same thing at the McDonald's across the street and lock them up. These are grown people believing they were traveling to have sex with boys or girls. That's what I did for a few years in the undercover room in Baltimore. I became a stationary supervisor of one of the squads. There was 2 Innocent Images squads, and then went to headquarters and ran the Innocent Images program. When I was a supervisor, I really had a great section chief, Pete Brust, had a great AD, a great DAD, Steve Martinez. I don't know if you know any of these guys, but they were like, go get them, Stace. What do you want? And I was like, okay, I want to set up an international task force because this is international, but we got to educate them. So they're like, okay, write up a plan. What do you want to do? I literally wrote up a plan. We rented 6 apartments across the street from the Calverton office, and I brought in police officers from all over the world, different countries. We rotated them every 6 months. I brought the first group was Australia, United Kingdom, Philippines, Norway, Germany, Croatia. We brought these police officers in, and they sit right next to us in the Calverton undercover operation, and they were helping us put together those international big cases. I know it's shocking, but a lot of American citizens were the ones that traveled to other countries to victimize children from other countries. They were getting worried about our statutes at that point because we really started coming down hard. We finally started giving them 10 years for production or 20 years for more than 100 images. There were all these upward angles on some of those violations. So they started going to other countries and victimizing other countries. Thailand or the Philippines. These are countries that all participated in the international task force, and we were taken off. So proud of it. It was so successful. To get it off the ground, I had to go visit all these countries. Isn't that a shame, Jerry? Don't you feel bad for me? I had to go to all these countries.
Philippines, Thailand, Australia. Oh,
UK.
poor you.
Oh, it was so sad. Germany, United Kingdom. Yes, it was terrible. I had to go to all these countries and convince them this was a great initiative. It really was a great initiative. And even after I left the program, it carried on for a few more years after that.
One of the things that people may be surprised about, and I'd like for you to tell us more about it, is that if a U.S. citizen goes to a foreign country and does abuse a child, sexually abuse a child, they could be charged here in the U.S. Tell us more about that.
They absolutely can. We definitely do it because they can get charges there. Say they go to Thailand or they go to the Philippines and they victimize children, and it happens often, especially American men were going to Thailand. They would go to another country, victimize those children, and they knew the statutes weren't that strong there. But what they didn't realize is we in the United States, because they're American citizens, started charging them ourselves for the violation of traveling to have sex with a minor.
I heard that it's called sexual tourism.
Sex tourism, yes. It definitely was under the radar. Like we really, again, just like when we discovered the Orchid Club, we didn't realize it was going to be that prevalent until we started really doing the investigation. We set up a whole sting operation in Thailand with the Thai police. We set up a whole sting operation in Croatia, in Norway. It was a very successful operation. And that's really what helped bring crimes against children to light. I don't think people understood or really realized how prevalent it was. How many people were really doing this? It was enormous how many people who were victimizing children across the globe. It's our duty as law enforcement officers to join forces and try to stop it, in my opinion.
This international initiative, when did that start? When did you begin that?
2002. And we even made little badges and everything. International Crimes Against Children Task Force. We had a little badge and little pins and everything. I'm very proud of it. We did put a lot of people in jail.
Do you have an image of
the patch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get it to you.
I'll put it in the show notes so people can see it.
I still have one. I actually kept one. Yep.
So in working these cases and then taking it to a national and international initiative, it sounds like it was a matter of not just doing the cases, but also getting some of the laws changed so that this work could be taken more seriously and you could get more serious charges. How is that done? Were you working with Congress? Were you working with a particular presidential administration?
Yeah, the people who were committing crimes against children, whether they're producing child porn or distributing, some of them were still getting very, in my opinion, was light sentences. They were getting a few years here and there. There was not enough education of the impact of what this does to children. During the time frame, 2002, October of 2002, I was at headquarters. Director Mueller was the director, and President George W. Bush asked us, HSI, some local law enforcement, to do a roundtable and explain to him, because we had been rattling the cage, the Bureau, we really want to get higher statute penalties for these crimes against children. We really wanted 10 plus years per picture. We really wanted life sentences for 10,000 images or more. We really wanted to upward those penalties because these guys were walking away with 5 years, and that's just not enough. So he invited us. There were quite a few of us. There was a roundtable event at the White House. I remember I drove over with my section chief and my AD and Director Mueller. Quite a few of us got to speak to George W. Bush. I actually briefed him on the Dmitry Bron case and how I was also an undercover agent in his images and how I worked travelers. You know, it was amazing. He actually really listened. Like I could tell he was really listening. And he asked me a couple questions. He engaged me and he heard us. I really feel like he heard us, Jerry, and was moved by it. When he did a press conference after, he talked about it and he said, we're going to make this happen. Mueller was so proud. He actually pointed to me and winked and he said, a particular FBI agent convinced me that she needs more money too. And she really moved me. And he was talking about me. He actually named me at some point. At that point, we would think our innocent images program was like at 6 million. We went from 6 million to 12 and a half in a year. When I left, we were at 15 million. So we were setting up task forces all over the country. We had innocent images task forces all over the country. And the task forces, you know as well as I do, I love task forces. They're the best thing in the entire world because you got your feds, your state, and your local. I learned some of the best interview skills, some of the best investigative skills from my state and local partners. I love them and I love working with them. They're the best of the best. And when we started working together, boy, did we put some people in jail. It was fantastic. He really was the reason we started getting all that funding. And you need the funding for all the special computers we had to have, all these special tools we were using to track the bad guys down, all these innocent images task forces across the country. George W. Bush was definitely the one who listened to me and gave us some money and made the penalties stiffer.
I know you've shared with me a photo of you with him. So I want to make sure that I also include that in the show notes because you must be very proud that your testimony at that round table was what convinced him to give that extra money, which I take it the program lives today and continues to be funded in order to keep children safe.
That is correct. To this day, the Innocent Images National Initiative is still a well-funded, and the people that work it, whether it's the analysts, the agents, the secretaries, still are so driven to help save children. I admire every one of them.
We've gotten to the point of the episode where I like to ask my standard question, which is when and why did you join the FBI?
It's the corniest one, typical corny. I was in junior high. We took a tour. I was a Jersey girl. I'm a Jersey girl. And we went down to DC and we took a tour of the headquarters building. And I knew then I was going to be an FBI agent. I knew then I was going to be an FBI agent and I was going to do whatever it took to be an FBI agent. Never left my heart. I still very proud of my 30-year career, 6 divisions. I wouldn't take anything back. Best career in the world. I joined the FBI in 1991. I joined as an SSG, Special Surveillance Group. I was processing during that time and they froze the academy. So my recruiter in the Newark, New Jersey division's like, oh, okay, you need to just stick by and, they'll unfreeze it soon enough. Here, try this job. And I did. I did that for a couple years, for 2 years.
What were you doing before that?
I was in grad school. I was an internal investigator for Macy's and in grad school. I did that for a couple years in the Newark division and they unfroze the academy and my entire class, we were all internal. If you remember back in the day, they offered the academy to internal first because we were already vetted. We already been through all those background checks and everything. So my entire class was internal and my first office was Norfolk division. That was in 1994.
We share that because I actually came through the Norfolk division myself because I was at the time living and working as a probation officer in Newport News, Virginia.
Great office. Loved it there.
Yeah, it was. I was only there for 6 months before I went off to Sacramento, but I enjoyed my 6 months there and still remember some of the people. Hey, Debbie Sue.
I do remember Debbie Sue.
She listens to the podcast, so she'll be pleasantly surprised to hear her name.
Indeed. Oh, that's so funny. So Newark, Norfolk, Oklahoma City, Baltimore, headquarters, Baltimore. And I retired. They gave me my final transfer to Jacksonville. And I retired out of the Daytona Beach office. My OP.
Did you work Innocent Images your entire career?
There's a couple times I would walk away. Like there's times you have to, certain cases would make an impact. That's the beauty about the Bureau, man. If you need a break, you can go somewhere else and work something else for a little while. I worked Innocent Images on and off for pretty much 25 of the 30 years. I also worked gangs, drugs. Obviously, we all worked 9/11 when that happened. I was a crisis coordinator and manager for the Baltimore division for a while. But yeah, out of the 30 years in the Bureau, probably on and off 25 years, I worked for Innocent Images.
When did you retire and what are you doing now?
I retired a little over 4 years ago now, and I am Vice President of Sales and Business Development for a company called Tranquility AI. We do AI for law enforcement. I also have my own consulting firm, and I consult on other businesses that are trying to get their feet on the ground and start up for their own selling their product, a lot of SaaS to law enforcement. So I help them as well.
I don't know this new term SaaS. Could you break it down for us?
It's basically software. One of the things, and Innocent Images did this, really, it was my experience in Innocent Images. I felt like we were always one step behind the bad guys. They were always had the better tools. The Bureau, we never had the best of the best. I think my computer was probably older than me half the time. But we always played catch up. The bad guys had bigger, better. And I always wanted to help that. So when I retired, I was like, what can I still do? I still wanted to make an impact. I still want to help my brothers and sisters in blue. Why don't I help them try to get the best computer and SaaS that is out there? How can I help law enforcement get better at the game of catching bad guys, especially using computers and computer software? If I can help them using an AI tool, artificial intelligence, if I can sell them an artificial intelligence tool that helps them put bad guys in jail, why don't I? So that's why I continue to do it. I have way too much energy to stop. I love being around my brothers and sisters in blue. I really do. And I want to just keep helping them.
Well, you brought up something that I hadn't thought about, and I hope you're prepared to answer this. That is AI. Because of AI and the ability to create images, which I do on a regular basis, how has that impacted what we've been talking about today? Are people using AI to create child sexual abuse images?
They are. They were doing that in the very early ages with that cartoon stuff. They were trying to do it with the cartoons. I remember there was a time frame in those early days where Supreme Court pretty much said, nah, it doesn't really count if it's just sort of simulated cartoon. And we actually fought that and fought it hard. So even AI or any kind of tool that you're depicting that, it's fair game for us because the impact is the same. Sometimes it's shown that it'll entice people to do these actual acts. It still can be prosecuted.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. Fantastic to hear that they can't squeeze through some computerized digital AI loophole in order to continue to make these images.
Agreed. If there's a little loophole, they can find it. God knows they will. That's why I try to do what I do and keep trying to find bigger, faster, better tools on the computers to try to keep up with these guys and maybe even beat them at their own game.
Love that. I want to thank you for coming on FBI Retired Case File Review today. And I love to give my guests the last word. So what would you like to say?
I would like to say that the FBI is the greatest law enforcement entity in the world, in my opinion. And I am very proud to have worked for them and learned from them for 30 years. I applaud my brothers and sisters still back doing the hard work. I want them to hold steadfast, keep their eyes focused on the big picture and putting bad guys in jail. That's all we do, put bad guys in jail.
And that's the end of the interview. In your podcast app's description of this episode, there's a direct link to the show notes at jerrywilliams.com, where you'll find a photo of retired agent Stacey Perkins, as well as links to news articles about the sentencing of Nanny 69, the Innocent Images National Initiative, and related images. There's also a link to FBI Case File Review Episode 29 with retired agent B. DeFazio about innocent images and child predators, where you can learn more about how investigators pose online as children to identify and capture predators. I hope you enjoyed the interview and that you'll share it with your friends, family, and associates. You can show me just how much you liked it by buying me a coffee. There's a link in your podcast app's description of this episode, or you can visit jerrywilliams.com and tap on the little coffee cup icon in the bottom right-hand corner of my website. Don't forget to follow FBI Retired Case File Review on your favorite podcast app. Now, this podcast is all about true crime, but if you're also interested in crime fiction, once a month, via my reader team email, I keep you up to date on the FBI and books, TV, and movies. When you join my reader team, you get access to my FBI reading resource, a colorful list of more than 70 books about the FBI written by FBI agents who have been guests on this podcast. There's nonfiction, crime fiction, true crime, and memoirs. You'll also get my FBI reality checklist, where I debunk 20 cliches about the FBI and receive news about what I'm up to and about my FBI nonfiction and crime fiction books. I want to thank you for listening to the very end. I hope you come back for another episode of FBI Retired Case File Review with Jerry Williams. Thank you.